January 1944, the Pentagon, Washington. Colonel Hilton Riley receives an insane order from his superiors. The order is not conventional. The order contains no mention of conventional military tactics. The order states, "Create a military unit that wages war not with weapons, but with deception. Create a unit that fights with brushes and rubber. Create a unit that exists to fool the enemy into seeing things that are not there." Riley reads the order twice. Riley wonders if he is misunderstanding. But the language is clear. The Pentagon wants an army made of illusions. Riley understands the reasoning. German intelligence has become sophisticated. German reconnaissance aircraft photograph American troop movements daily. German radio operators listen to American transmissions. German analysts study every detail. They know how many divisions are where. They track the deployments. They make strategic decisions based on this intelligence. What if, Riley thinks, American forces could make German intelligence see things that do not exist? What if American forces could create phantom armies? Armies made of rubber and compressed air and recorded sound. Armies that appear on photographs but do not exist in reality. If German intelligence is fooled, German armies will move in wrong directions. If German armies move in wrong directions, real American forces can strike where German defenses are weakest. The mathematics are elegant. Deception equals victory without casualties. But how to create false armies? How to fool German aerial reconnaissance? How to make rubber look like steel? Riley understands. He cannot use conventional soldiers. Conventional soldiers have been trained to shoot and march and follow orders. Conventional soldiers understand the grammar of war. But the grammar of illusion is different. The grammar of illusion requires artists. Riley receives permission to recruit unconventionally. Riley places announcements in art schools. Riley interviews painters, sculptors, stage designers, sound engineers. Riley seeks people who understand illusion, people who can make the fake appear real, people who think in terms of visual deception and psychological manipulation. Among the recruits is William Henry Blass, 22 years old, from Terre Haute, Indiana. Blass is a fashion designer. Before the war, Blass sketched dresses and evening gowns for theatrical productions in New York. Blass has never fired a weapon. Blass has never marched in formation. Blass has never attended military academy. Blass is an artist. Blass exists to make beauty. Blass exists to transform cloth into vision. Riley interviews Blass. Riley says, "Do you understand that the war effort requires your skills?" Blass responds, "I understand that I have been drafted." Riley says, "You have not been drafted. You have been recruited. You will not shoot people. You will paint tanks. You will not throw grenades. You will throw canvas over inflatable rubber. You will create an army that does not exist." Blass thinks this is either the most brilliant military concept or the most absurd. Blass asks, "Will anyone believe in this fake army?" Riley responds, "They will believe because we will make them believe. They will believe because German intelligence wants to believe. They will believe because belief is easier than doubt." By March 1944, Riley has assembled 1,100 soldiers who are not soldiers, painters, sculptors, sound engineers, radio operators who study drama, stage designers, actors, musicians, photographers. This is not an army. This is a theatrical company. This is a troupe of performers masquerading as a military unit. Riley assembles them in a warehouse in New Jersey. The warehouse is filled with strange objects: rubber tanks, inflatable trucks, canvas structures designed to resemble military vehicles, loudspeakers designed to amplify recorded sounds. Riley addresses the assembly. "You are the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. Your mission? is to deceive. Your enemy will be German military intelligence. Your weapons will be rubber and illusion. Your victory will be invisible. You will win battles that never occur, because the enemy will move their armies to places where you are not. You will kill no one, but your work will save thousands of lives, because soldiers will not die in battles that never happen. Blas stands in this warehouse and understands that the war has just become absurd in a way that surpasses all previous absurdity. Blas is a fashion designer. Now Blas is a soldier in an army of illusions. Blas is being paid to make rubber look like steel. Blas is being employed by the United States military to commit fraud on an international scale. Riley continues. Your enemy underestimates us. Your enemy believes Americans are unsophisticated. Your enemy believes Americans can only win through superior firepower. Your enemy does not understand that Americans can win through superior deception. The Germans believe in the superiority of German military intelligence. We will prove them wrong. We will fool them. We will make German intelligence see what they expect to see, not what actually exists. And through that deception, we will win the war. For the first time, Blas understands something essential about the war. The war is not really about weapons. The war is about perception. The war is about what people believe to be true. If German commanders believe there is a division of tanks at location A, they will send troops to defend against it. If there is no division at location A, only rubber and compressed air, the German troops have still been deployed wrongly. The actual American divisions are now free to attack location B without German reinforcements. The battle is won not through violence, but through misdirection. Blas and the other artists begin training. Training is unlike any military training. There are no marching drills. There is no weapons training. Instead, Blas learns to inflate rubber tanks. Blas learns how the shadows must fall to appear realistic. Blas learns that a tank is not just a shape. A tank is a pattern of shadows and light and specific angles. If the shadows are correct, if the proportions are correct, German reconnaissance photographs will register rubber as metal. Blas learns that war, in its essence, is about making people believe things. Making people believe there are more soldiers than there are. Making people believe armies are in places where they are not. Making people believe the enemy is weak when the enemy is strong. Making people believe the enemy is strong when the enemy is weak. This is the true art of war. Not tactics, not firepower, but psychology. Blas is being trained in the psychology of warfare. Riley tells the assembled artists, "You are warriors, but your warfare will be waged with canvas and rubber and recorded sound. You will not see the enemy. You will not fire at the enemy, but the enemy will see you, or rather the enemy will see what we want them to see. And that vision will determine the outcome of battles and the flow of the war." Blas thinks, "I left New York to become part of the war effort. I expected to contribute through sacrifice. I expected to contribute through hardship. Instead, I am contributing through deception. I am contributing through the creation of illusions. I am being transformed from a fashion designer into an illusionist. I am being transformed from a person who makes beauty into a person who makes war through fake beauty." For the first time since being drafted, Blas understands that he is part of something revolutionary. Not revolutionary in the sense of changing the world, but revolutionary in the sense of changing how war is conducted. Riley is proving that in modern warfare, the image is more important than the reality. The photograph is more important than the fact. The perception is more important than the substance. Blas and the other 1,000 artists will wage war through the manipulation of these principles. And this war of illusions will begin in 3 months, when Ghost Army first deploys to England to create the greatest deception of World War II. April 1944, Kent, England. Blas stands before a rubber tank for the first time. The tank is rolled up like a tarp. It weighs 45 kilograms. It is absurd. It looks like equipment for a swimming pool. Blas cannot imagine that this rubber object could fool anyone into believing it is a real tank. But Sergeant Mitchell, the equipment specialist, explains the process. Unfold the tank. Connect the air pump. Inflate. Inflate until the rubber is taut. Secure the base with stakes. Install the camouflaged netting. Step back. From 300 meters, this is a tank. From 2,000 meters altitude, which is where German reconnaissance photographs are taken, this is indistinguishable from a real Sherman tank. Blas inflates the tank. The rubber becomes rigid. The tank takes shape. From a distance of 30 meters, it is clearly fake. The proportions are slightly off. The surface is too smooth. The rivets are painted, not real. But as Blas walks backward, the illusion improves. At 100 meters, the tank begins to look real. At 300 meters, the tank looks convincing. At 1,000 meters, the tank would look like any other tank on the battlefield. Mitchell explains further. The key to illusion is not perfection. The key is suggestion. You do not need perfect details. You need the right shadows. You need the right proportions. You need the right positioning. The human brain fills in what it expects to see. If you provide the correct outline and the correct shadows, the brain completes the picture. Blas begins to understand the craft of military deception. It is similar to fashion design. In fashion, the garment does not make the person beautiful. The garment suggests beauty. The garment creates lines that flatter. The garment creates silhouettes that complement. The viewer provides the actual beauty through their perception. Military deception works the same way. The rubber tank does not make the division real. The rubber tank suggests a division. The arrangement of rubber tanks creates the impression of concentration. The viewer, the German aerial reconnaissance photographer, provides the belief. Over the next 6 weeks, Blas and the other artists practice. They inflate rubber tanks. They position them in realistic formations. They study shadow angles. They arrange camouflage netting. They learn that 3 tanks positioned in a triangle are more convincing than 3 tanks in a line. They learn that partially concealed tanks are more convincing than fully visible tanks. They learn that distressed camouflage is more convincing than perfect camouflage. They learn the grammar of military deception. Parallel to the tank training, sound engineers are preparing acoustic deception. The sound of war is as important as the sight of war. The Germans listen to radio transmissions. The Germans listen to the acoustic signatures of military movements. If an army is present, it produces characteristic sounds. Tank engines running, gears grinding, tracks moving on gravel, soldiers shouting, equipment clanging. The Ghost Army sound specialists have acquired the finest recording equipment available in 1944. They have recordings of actual tanks, actual troop movements, actual military operations. The recordings are reproduced through amplification systems capable of producing sound at volumes of 500 watts. At full volume, these systems can be heard at distances of 15 kilometers. A German observer at 15 kilometers away would hear the sound of an approaching tank division. The observer would believe a division is approaching, but the observer would be hearing a recording played through speakers concealed in the woods. Radio operators undergo different training. The radio is the nervous system of military communication. Every military unit communicates through radio. Radio operators have specific protocols, specific codes, specific styles of communication. Radio operators of the Ghost Army are trained to imitate the radio procedures of real divisions. They study transcripts of actual radio communications. They learn the voice characteristics of specific division commanders. They practice intercepting and responding to transmissions in ways that appear authentic. Radio operator Thomas Marsh, a former theater sound technician, practices radio communications. Marsh listens to recordings of American division commanders. Marsh studies their speech patterns. Marsh studies the military terminology they employ. Marsh practices. This is Command 1 Alpha. We are moving to position Delta. ETA 0600 hours. Out. Marsh practices until his radio transmissions are indistinguishable from authentic military communications. German radio monitors who intercept Marsh's transmissions will believe they are intercepting real division movements. By May 1944, the Ghost Army is ready. The unit consists of approximately 1,100 personnel, organized into several companies. Each company has specific expertise: tank inflation specialists, camouflage experts, sound engineers, radio operators, photographers who document the false positions to ensure consistency, artists who create additional camouflage materials. The organization is ad hoc and unconventional. It is not a real military unit. It is a theatrical production organized with military discipline. Riley addresses the assembled Ghost Army for a final briefing before deployment. In 10 days, you will deploy to England. Your mission will be to support the D-Day invasion. Your objective will be to deceive German military intelligence about the nature, location, and strength of American forces. You will not fire weapons. You will not participate in combat. You will create illusions. The illusions you create will determine where German armies move. Where German armies move will determine where real battles occur. Real battles determine the casualties. Fewer casualties mean fewer deaths. You are not warriors, but your work will determine how many warriors die. Blas packs his equipment. Blas has been issued a complete military uniform with insignia indicating his rank as sergeant. Blas looks like a soldier. Blas acts like a soldier. Blas follows military discipline. But Blas is not a soldier. Blas is an artist who has been conscripted to wage war through illusion. Blas is a craftsman who will inflate rubber and create the greatest deception of the Second World War. On the evening before deployment, Blas writes a letter to his mother. I am being deployed to Europe as part of a secret military operation. I cannot tell you what I will be doing. I cannot tell you the nature of my assignment. I can only tell you that I am contributing to the war effort in ways that are unconventional. I am serving my country not as a combat soldier, but as an artist. I will return from this war changed, but I will return. I am confident in that. The Ghost Army boards transport ships in May 1944. The ships cross the Atlantic. Blas stands on deck and watches the ocean. Blas knows he is part of something revolutionary. Blas knows he is part of an experiment in military deception that has never been attempted before. Blas knows that his skills, his ability to see proportions, to understand shadows, to create visual illusions, have been militarized. Blas's artistic vision has become a weapon. And this weapon will be deployed in 1 month, during the greatest military operation of the war. Operation Fortitude. May 1944, Kent, England, southeast coast. Blas stands in a field and comprehends the scope of what is about to occur. The field extends for kilometers. In this field, the Ghost Army will construct the largest phantom military unit in the history of warfare. This field will become the headquarters of 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG. FUSAG will not be a real Army group. FUSAG will be a theatrical illusion designed to fool German military intelligence into believing that American invasion forces will land at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. General George Patton has been temporarily assigned to command FUSAG. Patton is a genuine general, famous, aggressive, legendary. Patton will be photographed visiting FUSAG headquarters. Patton's presence will provide authenticity. German intelligence will see photographs of Patton with FUSAG. German intelligence will conclude that if Patton commands it, FUSAG must be real and powerful. Blass and teams of engineers and artists begin construction. The operation is massive. Hundreds of inflatable tanks, hundreds of inflatable trucks, inflatable artillery pieces, inflatable supply depots. Some of the constructions are not inflatable. Some are real buildings with false fronts. Some are command tents with authentic military equipment inside. The goal? Create the appearance of a fully functional military formation, concentrated and ready for imminent deployment. The positioning is crucial. Blass learns that tank positioning is not random. Tank positions reflect military doctrine. Tank positions reflect logistical needs. Tank positions reflect the flow of command and control. A real tank division consists of approximately 10,000 personnel and 300 tanks, organized into specific formations. The Ghost Army recreates these formations using rubber tanks. If German photography captures images of these formations, German analysts will recognize the patterns and conclude that real military units are present. Over 5 weeks, Blass and the Ghost Army work through day and night. They inflate tanks. They position them in formation. They create camouflage patterns that look natural from the air. They install dummy command centers with radio antennas and field telephones. They create fake motor pools with trucks. They plant tent lines suggesting infantry bivouacs. They install fake fuel depots. They install fake ammunition storage areas. The field is transformed into a military city that does not exist. Blass understands the stakes. This field will be photographed by German reconnaissance aircraft. The photographs will be analyzed by German intelligence officers. The German officers will make decisions based on what they see in those photographs. If the photographs are convincing, German commanders will move German divisions to defend against FUSAG. If German divisions defend against a phantom army, those divisions will not be present to defend against the real invasion. Radio operators stationed in Kent begin transmitting. They use authentic military frequencies. They use authentic military protocols. They impersonate the commanders of real army groups. Radio operator Thomas Marsh transmits. 1st Army Group Headquarters to 8th Army. We are conducting pre-assault briefings. Logistics are being finalized. Estimated deployment in 2 weeks. Out. German radio monitors intercept these transmissions. German analysts listen to the transmissions and conclude that a massive American army group is preparing for invasion. The intercepts are forwarded to German High Command. German High Command studies the intercepts and decides the main American invasion will come at Pas de Calais. The D-Day invasion at Normandy must be a secondary operation. German strategic reserves must be held back to counter the main invasion at Pas de Calais. Oberstleutnant Hans von Luck, a German intelligence officer, receives photographic evidence. Von Luck studies aerial photographs of FUSAG positions. The photographs are clear. They show military formations. They show tank concentrations. They show supply lines. They show command structures. Von Luck has studied American military organization extensively. The formations in the photographs match American military doctrine. The formations make sense. The formations look real because they are designed to look real by people who understand what real looks like. Von Luck writes an assessment. American forces in Kent represent the main invasion force. This formation consists of approximately 4 army groups with estimated strength of 1 million men. This force is positioned to invade at Pas de Calais or Belgian coast. Alternative possibility is diversionary force in Normandy, with main invasion at Pas-de-Calais. Recommendation: maintain German strategic reserves in Pas-de-Calais to counter the main invasion. The assessment is transmitted to Hitler. Hitler reads it. Hitler studies the intelligence summaries. Hitler makes a decision. The Normandy invasion is a feint. The main invasion will be at Pas-de-Calais. German armies must be ready at Pas-de-Calais. German strategic reserves will not be committed to Normandy. June 5, 1944. The Ghost Army in Kent inflates 1,000 inflatable tanks. The tanks are positioned in perfect military formations. They are camouflaged with netting and paint. They look like a massive military concentration. Radio operators continue transmitting deceptive messages. German reconnaissance aircraft fly over Kent. They photograph the Phantom Army. The photographs are transmitted to German High Command. June 6, 1944. D-Day. At 0600 hours, real American forces land at Normandy. The invasion begins. Real soldiers fight real battles. Real people die. Real bullets are fired. Real shells explode. The invasion that Ghost Army has been supporting is underway. But 15 German divisions remain in Pas-de-Calais. These divisions are not defending against American invasion. These divisions are defending against FUSAG, the Phantom Army. These divisions are defending against ghost tanks and recorded radio transmissions. These divisions remain in place because German military intelligence believes FUSAG is real. These divisions remain in place because Blass and the Ghost Army have successfully created an illusion. The consequences are catastrophic for Germany. 15 divisions could have been defending Normandy. 15 divisions could have contained the invasion. 15 divisions could have driven the Americans back into the sea. But these divisions are instead deployed around Pas-de-Calais, waiting to fight a Phantom Army. The Phantom Army never attacks. The Phantom Army does not exist. But by waiting to defend against it, German forces abandon the real invasion. Blass watches German reconnaissance aircraft fly over Kent. Blass knows the photographs are being taken. Blass knows that thousands of kilometers away, German intelligence officers are studying those photographs. Blass knows that German military decisions are being made based on rubber tanks that Blass inflated. Blass understands that his work, his artistic work, has influenced the flow of a world war. Riley receives confirmation that the deception has succeeded. FUSAG has achieved its strategic objective. German forces have been drawn away from Normandy. The invasion at Normandy has succeeded because Ghost Army created a convincing Phantom Army at Kent. Riley addresses the Ghost Army. You have done your job perfectly. The enemy believes in you. The enemy is defending against you. The enemy is spending military resources opposing a force that does not exist. This is the ultimate victory. You have won a battle without firing a shot. You have redirected a war's course through deception. Blass deflates the rubber tanks. Blass packs the equipment. The Ghost Army will move to France. The Ghost Army in Kent was a success. Now Ghost Army will wage deception on the continent. But FUSAG, the Phantom Army, will remain in the imagination of German intelligence. FUSAG will haunt German strategic planning until the end of the war. FUSAG will never be discovered to be fake because FUSAG will never attack. FUSAG will simply vanish, replaced by the real war that unfolds at Normandy and beyond. July through December 1944. Ghost Army moves to mainland France. The unit now operates behind advancing American lines. The mission remains the same: deceive German forces about American positions and strength, but the operations become more dangerous. In England, Ghost Army was secure. In France, Ghost Army operates close to the front lines. If German forces discover that Ghost Army is unarmed, that Ghost Army consists of artists, not soldiers, German forces will attack. Ghost Army will be slaughtered. The principle of Ghost Army operations becomes standardized. Real American divisions occupied defensive positions. At night, real divisions withdraw. Ghost Army moves into the abandoned positions. Ghost Army inflates rubber tanks. Ghost Army places dummy equipment. Ghost Army activates sound systems, broadcasting recordings of tank movements and soldier conversations. Ghost Army transmits false radio messages indicating that real divisions are still in position. German forces, observing the defensive positions, believe the positions are still manned by real American divisions. German forces do not attack. German forces do not probe the positions. German forces assume the positions are heavily defended. Meanwhile, real American divisions move to different locations where they can attack German forces from unexpected directions. The German strategy, to resist at the positions defended by Ghost Army, becomes irrelevant because the real American forces are attacking elsewhere. Ghost Army has created defensive positions that do not need to be defended. German forces waste time and resources defending against phantom defenders. Operation Viersen, September 1944. Near the city of Viersen on the Western Front, Blas participates in one of Ghost Army's most complex operations. The operation requires Ghost Army to simulate 2 entire tank divisions concentrated in the Viersen area. Blas and 200 other team members work through the night installing equipment. Inflatable tanks are positioned in realistic tank formations. Dummy command posts are established with field telephones and radio antennas. Camouflage netting is installed with authentic patterns based on real American military camouflage doctrine. By dawn, the Viersen area appears to be defended by 2 tank divisions, approximately 600 tanks and 8,000 personnel. The appearance is false. Ghost Army has only a few hundred personnel and a few hundred pieces of equipment. But German reconnaissance reports indicate 2 divisions in the Viersen area. German intelligence analysts conclude that attacking Viersen directly would result in unacceptable tank losses. German forces therefore concentrate at different locations. German forces defend against the phantom divisions at Viersen. Real American divisions attack German positions elsewhere, where German forces are not concentrated. American victories follow. Blas becomes an expert at reading German tactical thinking. Blas understands that German commanders follow predictable patterns. German commanders study reconnaissance reports. German commanders analyze photographs. German commanders make logical decisions based on available intelligence. If Ghost Army provides false intelligence that indicates strong American positions at location A, German commanders will avoid location A. If real American forces attack location B, where German commanders have not concentrated forces, American forces will achieve victory. Operation Bettemberg, October 1944, Luxembourg. Ghost Army simulates American artillery positions near the city of Bettemberg. Inflatable artillery pieces are positioned in formations that match American field artillery doctrine. Radio operators transmit messages indicating artillery unit movements and firing coordinates. The simulated artillery positions are so convincing that German artillery begin counter-battery fire, firing at ghost artillery pieces that do not exist. Blas watches German shells explode in empty fields where inflatable artillery pieces have been positioned. The shells destroy rubber and air. The shells destroy empty camouflage nets. The shells destroy nothing of military value. But the German shells represent ammunition expended. Every shell fired at Ghost artillery is ammunition not available for other purposes. Every German artillery crew engaged in counter-battery fire against Ghost Army is not engaged in supporting German combat operations elsewhere. The psychological impact of Ghost Army's work becomes evident. German forces begin to report the existence of Ghost Army in their intelligence summaries, though they do not know that Ghost Army exists. German forces describe American strength as greater than it actually is. German forces believe American forces are more concentrated than they actually are. German forces overestimate American capabilities. These overestimations lead German commanders to make conservative tactical decisions. Conservative decisions lead to German military disadvantage. Operation Muse, December 1944. The Ardennes Offensive, the German counteroffensive intended to break through American lines and reach the Belgian coast. Ghost Army is deployed to simulate American reinforcements arriving at the front. Ghost Army inflates dummy vehicles. Ghost Army transmits false radio messages indicating that American reserves are being concentrated in specific areas. German intelligence intercepts these messages and concludes that American forces are receiving significant reinforcements. The German commander, Field Marshal Bernhard von Rundstedt, adjusts his strategy based on this intelligence. Von Rundstedt believes American reinforcements are arriving faster than expected. Von Rundstedt decides that the offensive window is closing. Von Rundstedt orders accelerated German offensive operations. German forces attack with less preparation and less coordination than they might have. American real forces, including divisions that Ghost Army has simulated, meet the German offensive with organized resistance. The German offensive, intended to break through American lines, becomes bogged down. By December, the German Ardennes offensive has failed. American counteroffensives are succeeding. Ghost Army has contributed to American victory by providing false intelligence that influenced German strategic decisions. Blass, during these operations, becomes increasingly proficient at the craft of military deception. Blass learns that the most effective deceptions are not the most elaborate. The most effective deceptions are the simplest. A single dummy tank positioned prominently is more convincing than dozens of dummy tanks positioned carelessly. A single radio transmission at the right time is more valuable than hundreds of transmissions. A photograph showing evidence of recent movement is more powerful than dozens of photographs showing static positions. Blass also learns that deception operates through psychology, not through technical perfection. Germans want to believe they have superior intelligence. Blass and Ghost Army provide false intelligence that confirms German assumptions about their own superiority. Germans believe the intelligence because it tells them what they want to believe. The intelligence appears to confirm German theories about American military organization. The intelligence appears logical. The intelligence appears authentic because it is designed by people who understand authenticity from the inside. The danger to Ghost Army becomes acute as German counterintelligence becomes increasingly aware of deception operations. By late 1944, German intelligence officers have concluded that American forces are employing large-scale deception operations. German intelligence begins to question whether American tactical reports are accurate. German intelligence becomes suspicious of what they see in reconnaissance photographs. But by then, Ghost Army has already achieved its primary objectives. German strategic reserves have been diverted. German offensives have been delayed. German defensive strategies have been rendered ineffective. Blass deflates rubber tanks in the mud of Belgium. Blass understands that the war is being won not through massive firepower, but through superior deception. Americans have more deception capability than Germans. Americans are better at creating illusions. Americans are better at making Germans believe things that are not true. This advantage, the ability to deceive effectively, has proven as valuable as any advantage in conventional military power. Riley assesses Ghost Army's operational record. 23 major deception operations conducted, estimated 100,000 German soldiers diverted from combat operations, estimated 10,000 German deaths prevented through operations that redirected German forces away from real American concentrations. Ghost Army has achieved strategic effects equivalent to an additional army group. Ghost Army has accomplished more with rubber and illusion than many conventional military units accomplish with steel and explosives. January 1945. German intelligence headquarters, Berlin. Oberst Hans von Luck sits in a concrete bunker, studying reconnaissance photographs.
Von Luck has been analyzing American military dispositions for 18 months. Von Luck is among the most sophisticated intelligence analysts in the German military. Von Luck has seen patterns. Von Luck has learned to distinguish authentic military formations from fabricated ones. But in recent months, patterns have become inconsistent. Von Luck notices anomalies in the photographs. Some American tank formations do not leave track marks in muddy terrain where tank formations should leave obvious track marks. Tank formations should crush vegetation and create visible evidence of movement. Some American tank formations appear without this evidence. Von Luck examines photographs more carefully. He compares formation positions across multiple dates. Some formations remain static for weeks, an impossibility for real military units which must move for tactical and logistical reasons. Real military formations move constantly. Static formations suggest positions are not occupied by real units. Von Luck studies the shadows in the photographs. Reconnaissance photographs are analyzed not just for the objects themselves, but for shadow patterns. Shadows reveal three-dimensional structure. Shadows reveal whether objects are solid or hollow. Von Luck begins to notice that some tank shadows are subtly wrong. The tank shapes are correct, the proportions are correct, but the shadows do not precisely match what shadows of real tanks would look like. Von Luck's suspicion grows. American forces are employing large-scale dummy equipment. Von Luck writes an assessment for German High Command. Analysis of recent reconnaissance photography suggests American forces may be employing large-scale deception operations involving dummy tanks and false positioning. Certain photographic anomalies are inconsistent with real military formations. Recommendation: all American position reports should be evaluated with additional skepticism. American strength estimates may be inflated. American tank concentrations may be partially or wholly fabricated. The assessment is transmitted to Berlin. German High Command receives the report. But German High Command does not act on it. By January 1945, German military situation has become catastrophic. The Soviet Army has launched massive offensive operations on the Eastern Front. Soviet forces are advancing toward German territory. American and British forces are advancing from the west. German military resources are stretched to the breaking point. Questions about whether American tank formations are real or dummy seem irrelevant when German survival is at stake. Von Luck's assessment is filed. Von Luck's concerns are noted but not prioritized. German intelligence continues to report American positions and formations based on reconnaissance photography. German strategic planning continues to assume American strength estimates are approximately accurate. By the time German intelligence recognizes the deception has already served its purpose. The vulnerability of deception becomes apparent. Deception works only as long as the deceived do not recognize the deception. Once deception is discovered, the strategic advantage evaporates. German intelligence officers who begin to suspect Ghost Army operations cannot undo the months of false intelligence that has already influenced German strategic decisions. The decisions have already been made.
Armies have already been deployed. Defensive positions have already been established based on incorrect assumptions about American positions and strength. In France, Blas continues Ghost Army operations. Blas becomes increasingly aware of the danger. German counterintelligence is becoming more sophisticated.
German officers are beginning to question whether everything they see in reconnaissance photographs is genuine. Blas understands that Ghost Army's effectiveness is declining. The margin of safety is disappearing. If German forces attack Ghost Army positions and discover that the positions are defended by a handful of unarmed artists, Ghost Army will be annihilated. Blas experiences a moment of profound clarity during Operation Rhine in March 1945. Ghost Army has simulated American river crossing preparations at the Rhine River. Blas has positioned inflatable assault boats. Blas has simulated pontoon bridge construction. Blas has positioned inflatable artillery pieces in support positions. German reconnaissance aircraft photograph the river crossing preparations. German intelligence reports the formations. German commanders analyze the reports and decide to concentrate German defense at different locations, assuming the main crossing will occur upstream from Ghost Army's simulated positions. Real American forces cross the Rhine downstream from Ghost Army's operations. Real American forces meet minimal German resistance because German forces are concentrated at locations where German commanders believe main American forces will cross. The river crossing succeeds because Ghost Army has successfully misdirected German attention away from the real crossing site. But German forces eventually discover the deception. German counterintelligence realizes that they have been fooled. German officers report that American forces are conducting large-scale deception operations. But by this point, the war is already essentially decided. Germany is losing on all fronts. The deception operations that Ghost Army conducted months ago have already influenced strategic decisions. Those strategic decisions have already determined the flow of the war. The recognition of deception comes too late to change outcomes. Riley realizes that Ghost Army's operational life is approaching its end. German forces now suspect large-scale deception. German forces are becoming more cautious. German commanders are less likely to base strategic decisions on reconnaissance intelligence alone. German commanders are seeking confirmation from multiple sources. Ghost Army's effectiveness is diminishing. In early May 1945, as German forces collapse, Ghost Army is ordered to stand down. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops is deactivated. The 1,100 artists, designers, sound engineers, radio operators, and photographers are returned to conventional military units or prepared for demobilization. Ghost Army has completed its mission. The war is ending. The deception war is over. Trippers. Blas deflates a rubber tank for what he knows will be the final time. Blas rolls the rubber into storage. Blas removes the camouflage netting. Blas packs the equipment. Blas understands that he has participated in something revolutionary. Ghost Army has proven that, in modern warfare, deception can be as effective as direct military force. Ghost Army has proven that information warfare precedes and shapes kinetic warfare. Ghost Army has proven that controlling what the enemy believes determines what the enemy does. But Blas also understands something darker. Ghost Army's success depends on secrecy. Ghost Army's value depends on the enemy not recognizing the deception. Once German intelligence recognized Ghost Army operations, Ghost Army's effectiveness immediately diminished. Blas understands that in the future, if modern armies recognize deception operations, the deceptions lose power. The advantage goes to whatever side can create deceptions that resist recognition the longest. Riley briefs Ghost Army on final operations. Your service has concluded. You have waged war through deception. You have achieved strategic effects through imagination and psychological manipulation. You have proven that warfare is not purely about firepower. Warfare is about controlling perception. Warfare is about making the enemy believe things that cause the enemy to act in ways favorable to us. You have waged this warfare brilliantly. You may now return to your civilian lives knowing that you have served your country in ways that will never be publicly acknowledged. Ghost Army members understand that their service will be classified. Their operations will be secret. Their achievements will not be celebrated. Their names will not be recorded in military history. The 1,100 artists who have conducted 23 major deception operations will return to American civilian society without recognition. They will become artists, designers, architects, theater directors. They will use the skills they learned in Ghost Army for civilian purposes. They will never speak publicly about what they did. They will carry the secret of Ghost Army for the rest of their lives. August 1945. The war ends. Ghost Army is officially deactivated. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops ceases to exist, but the officers and men of Ghost Army cannot speak about their service. The operation is classified. The operations remain secret. The classification level is high. Ghost Army members are sworn to secrecy. The government warns them that disclosure of information about Ghost Army will result in prosecution under espionage laws. Ghost Army is erased from public history. William Henry Blass returns to New York in September 1945. Blass is discharged from the Army. Blass receives medals and commendations for service, but the citations are vague. They reference distinguished service in support of military operations, but do not specify what that service actually was. Blass cannot explain to family members what he did during the war. Blass cannot explain to friends what his military service consisted of. Blass must maintain the fiction that his Ghost Army service never occurred. Blass returns to fashion design. Blass becomes a designer for one of the most prestigious fashion houses in New York. Blass's post-war career is extraordinarily successful. By the 1960s, the House of Blass becomes one of the most influential fashion design operations in America. Blass dresses prominent American women. Blass dresses celebrities. Blass dresses the wives of politicians and business leaders. Blass becomes wealthy. Blass becomes famous. Blass becomes a legend in American fashion. But nobody knows that William Blass served in Ghost Army. Nobody knows that Blass spent 2 years inflating rubber tanks and creating military deceptions. Nobody knows that Blass's ability to understand visual impact and suggestion, skills he learned in Ghost Army, were the same skills he applied to fashion design. Blass's greatest wartime service remains unknown to the American public. Other Ghost Army members follow similar paths. Milton Caniff, a cartoonist, returns to comic strip creation after the war. Caniff draws the newspaper comic strip Steve Canyon for decades. Nobody connects Caniff's work creating fake military positions for Ghost Army with his post-war career in visual narrative. Cliff Simmons, a sound engineer in Ghost Army, returns to recording engineering after the war. Simmons works on acclaimed phonograph recordings and early television broadcasts. Nobody connects Simmons's understanding of sound deception, learned in Ghost Army, with his post-war success in audio production. George Jolin, a stage designer in Ghost Army, returns to theatrical set design. Jolin designs elaborate stage sets for Broadway productions. Nobody connects Jolin's understanding of visual deception, learned in Ghost Army, with his theatrical career. 50 years pass. 1996. Ghost Army is declassified. Military records are released. Historians begin researching Ghost Army operations. Books are published. Documentary films are produced. The story of Ghost Army emerges from decades of secrecy. William Blass is interviewed for the first time about his Ghost Army service. Blass is 86 years old.
Blass speaks hesitantly about operations he has kept secret for 50 years. Blass says, "I was a fashion designer. I was drafted into the Army. The Army determined that my skills in creating illusions through visual design were valuable. So they put me to work creating military illusions. I inflated rubber tanks. I positioned camouflage netting. I studied shadows. I understood that the convincing impression was more important than absolute perfection. These skills, which I learned during my fashion design career, were exactly the skills needed for military deception. After the war, I returned to fashion. I used the same principles I learned in Ghost Army. In fashion, just as in military deception, you create an impression. You create visual lines that suggest something to the observer. The observer provides the rest through their perception. Military historians begin analyzing Ghost Army's strategic impact. Declassified German intelligence reports are studied. Historians examine German military decisions that were influenced by Ghost Army deceptions. Historians calculate, Ghost Army operations diverted German military resources equivalent to approximately 2 full army groups. German forces committed to defending against phantom armies could not defend against real armies. Historians estimate that Ghost Army's operations prevented approximately 5,000 to 10,000 American casualties by redirecting German military attention and resources. The recognition comes decades too late for most Ghost Army members. Some have already died. Some are elderly and ill. But the surviving members finally receive public acknowledgement. In 1996, the Pentagon holds an official recognition ceremony for Ghost Army. Surviving members are invited. They are presented with special commendations. They are recognized as combat veterans. They are included in official military history. But the public recognition remains limited. Ghost Army is not as famous as other military units. Ghost Army did not conduct heroic frontal assaults. Ghost Army did not capture strategic objectives through direct combat. Ghost Army's heroism was invisible. Ghost Army's achievement was psychological. Most American citizens have never heard of Ghost Army. Most military historians focus on conventional warfare. Ghost Army remains a footnote in World War II history, remarkable but obscure. William Blass dies in 1984, before Ghost Army is declassified. Blass never experiences the public recognition of his Ghost Army service. Blass carries the secret to his grave. Blass's obituaries mention his fashion design achievements. Blass's obituaries do not mention Ghost Army. Military strategists study Ghost Army decades after the war ends. Strategic theorists recognize that Ghost Army proved a fundamental principle of modern warfare. Information and perception are as important as military force. Military strategists begin incorporating deception operations into war plans. Military forces begin developing more sophisticated deception capabilities. The lessons learned from Ghost Army influence military doctrine for decades. The broader lesson of Ghost Army is this: in modern warfare, the image is more powerful than the reality. What the enemy believes is more important than what the enemy observes. If the enemy believes false things, the enemy will act in ways favorable to you. If the enemy believes true things, the enemy will act in ways favorable to themselves. Control the information, control the perception, control the battlefield. Ghost Army succeeded because it understood human psychology. Ghost Army succeeded because it understood that people see what they expect to see. Ghost Army succeeded because it understood that military commanders facing superior enemy strength would make conservative decisions. Ghost Army manipulated these psychological realities. Ghost Army weaponized perception. Today, 80 years after Ghost Army operations ended, the unit is studied in military academies. Officers are taught Ghost Army tactics. Officers are taught that deception is a force multiplier.
Officers are taught that psychological operations can achieve military effects equivalent to conventional military operations. Ghost Army has become a cornerstone of modern military doctrine. But Ghost Army's most important legacy is philosophical, not tactical. Ghost Army proved that in war, appearance can equal reality. Ghost Army proved that deception, if sufficiently convincing, is indistinguishable from truth. Ghost Army proved that the observer, not the observed object, determines what is real. A rubber tank, if photographed convincingly and positioned realistically, becomes a real tank in the mind of the observer. The observer's belief in the tank's reality is the only reality that matters. This principle extends far beyond military operations. In modern society, where information is abundant and authentic distinguishable from false becomes increasingly difficult, Ghost Army's principle remains relevant. In a world of deepfakes and artificial imagery, Ghost Army demonstrates how convincing deception can be. In a world where visual evidence is used to support claims and accusations, Ghost Army demonstrates that visual evidence can be fabricated. In a world where perception determines reality, Ghost Army demonstrates that controlling perception is controlling reality. William Blass never became famous for his Ghost Army service, but Blass's influence through Ghost Army extended far beyond his later fashion design career. Blass's participation in Ghost Army influenced military doctrine. Blass's work in creating convincing deceptions influenced how modern militaries think about warfare. Blass's contribution to military history, made invisible through classification and secrecy, shaped how subsequent wars are fought. This is the story of Ghost Army. The story of 1,100 artists, designers, sound engineers, radio operators, and photographers who inflated rubber tanks and created recording sessions and transmitted false radio messages. The story of artists weaponizing their skills for military purposes. The story of how imagination and perception proved as valuable as firepower. The story of how the greatest military deception of World War II was conducted not by soldiers, but by artists. The story that remains largely unknown to the American public. The story of how rubber tanks changed the course of a war. The story of how Ghost Army proved that in modern warfare, the greatest victories are won not through direct combat, but through superior deception.